Charish Reid, and I'm just happy to be here reading from my book, Hearts on Hold. We'll talk about it more when people start trickling in. I'm just gonna keep this wave busy with nonsense. Right now, you've caught me on a great day where I've taken a shower, done my makeup, put on a wig, and I look halfway decent for you. And I know that with the coronavirus hitting all parts of the globe, we're all just trying to hang on at this moment. And it means a lot that, the writers Atelier would invite me and other cool writers to, hop on and talk about our work. Really, in this moment where everybody's social distancing and are a little isolated at the moment, it's really cool to talk to you, Kate, and other people's who might hop on. So it's 8:01. Let's just go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Charish Reid. Please discount all of the crazy nonsense that I gave you 4 minutes till 8. But yeah, I'm here. I'm a romance author. I've been writing for several, thank you, for several years writing romance, and I've got 2 books under my belt. The first one that I wrote and published was with Carina Press, a subsidiary or press from Harlequin Romance. And the second book, which I'm reading from with you guys tonight, is Hearts on Hold. I should have had another copy I should show them Right Escape. I don't have my other copy, my other book available right now. But yeah, I write romance, and I'm also, outside of writing romance full-time now, I am a English professor. I teach literature, cultural studies, and rhetoric. So I write romance and I teach college-age students. My husband and I live in Sweden, which is where we're teaching now. We moved here about 2 years ago. And so, it's been a wild ride. Let's see, 2 o'clock for you guys is 8 p.m. for us right now. Still getting a little bit of sunshine. In Sweden, the sun is going to stay out longer as the months go into summer. Fun fact, I guess. So teaching, writing, which ties in these 2 themes that I work with, academics and romance. Sexy academics. I'm trying my damnedest to make academics like hella sexy. And I think I'm succeeding. I think people are enjoying it. Mostly I write about Black female protagonists. The first book that I wrote, The Right Escape, I had a, bookish woman escape to Ireland to find, her passion, finish writing a book, get herself together after a humiliating breakup and canceling her wedding and losing her job. She runs off to her honeymoon that she should have taken with her fiance, but instead, she falls in love with a Irish professor. I'm not going to get into it, but that's The Right Escape. Hey, Asa. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts. I'm just going to try to keep them as short as possible. But from the Hearts on Hold, we've got a lovely, beautiful professor, Victoria Reese. I'm just going to read the synopsis. How about that? Victoria Reese knows an uphill battle when she sees one. Convincing her narrow-minded colleagues at the elite Pembroke University to back a partnership with the local library is a fight she saw coming and already planned for. What she didn't see coming was a wildly hot librarian who makes it clear books aren't the only things he'd like to handle. When a tightly wound, sexy as hell professor proposes a partnership between his library and her university, Children's Department head John Donovan is all for it. He knows his tattoos and easygoing attitude aren't quite what she expected, but the unmistakable heat between them is difficult to resist. And then there's the intriguing late fee on her record for the Duke's convenience. A late fee and a sexy romance novel? There's more to Dr. Reese than she's letting on. John might like to tease her about her late fee, but when he teases her in other ways, Victoria is helpless to resist. Mixing business and pleasure, oh, and it is pleasure, always comes with risk, but maybe a little casual fun between the sheets is just what Victoria needs. So that's this book. What I'm going to read for you guys today is past the part where Victoria and John have actually agreed to have a sordid affair. Academics is really rough for her this semester. The stress is piling up, and upon their meeting, they have some, flirting back and forth. It's really cute. They kiss in the stacks. And he's training her with the specific project that they're working on. And in the midst of, having a fun fling, both of them catch feelings. So we're going to just go to chapter 19, where John is trying to figure out what these feelings he's catching for Victoria actually mean. He talks to his buddy Chris. They hash it out, bro-man style. And then the next chapter, short chapter, Victoria and her girlfriends. It's like Grease, the back and forth. But her and her girlfriends, they talk about it. There's like a coming together. You get it. I'm just gonna read. Okay, chapter 19. Oh, and also John is taking care of his niece at the moment, and she's really cute, and her name is Becca, and she's a lovable scamp. But we'll start there. Chapter 19. After a Skype conference with his sister and niece, it had been decided that Becca would be better suited with a confidence-boosting activity on the weekends. With Jesse's permission, John had signed Becca up for a kiddie kickboxing lesson at Chris's gym. He knew what it was like to be a frustrated kid with no outlet. Becca could punch her way to zen-like serenity instead of shoving schoolgirls. After making arrangements with Chris, he checked his phone for any missing messages from Victoria. Nothing. And there still weren't any messages the following morning. It had been hell getting Becca out of bed, but they made it just in time for her first class. As he watched his niece do sit-ups through the viewing window with other parents, he felt a rough clap on his shoulder. "She looks good, Uncle Johnny," Chris said. "She's not exactly a fighter," John said. "Well, that's what the classes are for. Come on, man. Let's fire off a couple of rounds with the bag." John kept his eyes on Becca as the kids lined up for more calisthenics. "Yeah, sure. Dante's gonna take it easy on her, right? I don't want her to get hurt." "Aw, fatherhood looks cute on you. Now, don't worry about her. Dante's great with the kids." He was reluctant to leave the window and followed his friend to the boxing area of the gym. But he forced himself to back away. After all, hiring Dante last summer to start the kickboxing classes was probably the best business decision his friend could have made. News of a kid-friendly and women's-only class had spread throughout the town, making Flynn's Fitness the busiest gym in Farmingdale. John was proud of his buddy's business savvy, considering what a mess he was when they were kids. Now, as they stood with the heavy bag between them, John still saw the goofy kid he'd grown up with, just a bit taller and more muscular. Chris swept his blonde curls out of his face and flashed him the same good-humored grin. "Boxing gloves or sparring gloves?" he asked. John pulled off his hoodie and tossed it on a nearby bench. Sparring. Chris tossed him a pair and held on to the bag while John slipped them on. Man, it's been a minute since you've rocked the bag, so maybe we just start with 2 minutes, okay? John focused on the bag before him, drowning out Chris's voice. He laid into the bag with speed and force that sent him drifting into another place. The strength of his jabs and crosses knocked the bag and Chris back a couple of inches, catching his friend off guard. John's quiet fury was punctuated with a few well-timed uppercuts, knee thrusts, battering the bag and causing him to break a sweat. His mind was still on Victoria and how poorly things had gone yesterday. He'd initially thought that he had held his own while matching wit with her asshole boss, but after a fitful night of sleep, he now wondered if he had just sounded like an idiot in front of both of them. Victoria was crazy smart. She said things like textual artifacts. She had a legion of young scholars who followed her around looking for literary advice. I don't know, after being out of school for a decade, how could John fit into the world of elbow patch academics? Before he was aware of it, 2 minutes had turned into 5. Okay, break. Chris called him out of his trance. He dropped his arms and broke his intense stare on the bag. His breath was racing as blood pounded in his ears. Shit, he whispered. Yeah, shit's right. You okay? John tried to catch his breath. Yeah, right, Chris said, stepping from behind the bag. I know you well enough to say only 2 things calm you down when you're this stressed. Fighting and reading. What's got you battering my gym equipment? Just give me 5 minutes, man, John panted. They sat side by side on the bench as John waited for his resting heartbeat to lower. Hey man, men at our age, we have to pace ourselves, huh? Fuck you, I'm only in my 30s. Chris laughed outright, and somehow knocking on 40's door. Seriously, dude, what's up with you? You look a little bit more stressed than usual. John glanced at his friend. If I tell you, will you promise not to bro out? Okay. I met someone, John said, and I don't know what to call what we're doing. Hooking up. He shrugged. I don't think that's it. A situationship. I don't know. John struggled to find the words. I think she's... God, I don't know. Start from the beginning, Chris said. John breathed deeply and relayed the events that led Victoria and him to part ways yesterday, leaving out the sexy bits. When he'd finished, he felt his face redden and managed to avoid eye contact with Chris. I feel like a dumb kid again. Does she like me or does she like me? Chris gave one of his good-natured chuckles. She sounds interesting, I'll say that. I should call her, right? I don't know about that, Chris said. She made the schedule. What if I want more than the schedule? John asked. I've only known her for a week and I want to be with her every day. I think about her before I go to sleep. I wake up with her on my mind. Jesus, I've got to meet this Victoria, Chris said under his breath. I don't think I've heard you this sprung since Patricia Mayweather in the junior year of college. When she dumped you, you were a real bummer to be around. John rolled his eyes. This isn't a Mayweather situation. No, it sounds worse, actually. No, I got to date Patty for like a full year at least. I've only got a couple weeks with Dr. Reese. Weird. Is there anything in particular that pissed you off yesterday? Like, what made you two leave stuff so awkward? John thought back to their ruined lunch date. I don't know, what if I'm not good enough for her? Fuck that, Chris said. She wouldn't have bothered if you weren't good enough for her. Do you know how many women ask about you after you leave a session? Man, I'm tired of cleaning up after you. John looked at his friend and grinned in spite of himself. Cleaning up after me? Yeah, I have to distract them with a tiny white lie. How tiny? I tell them that you're dating someone so they can redirect their attention to me, he said. So I need you to start dating someone ASAP. John ran his hand down his beard and laughed. God, you're terrible. You have no idea, Chris said with a devilish grin. But when they find out you actually have a brain under those muscles and tattoos, and that you read to children for a living, women lose their collective shit. As a simple business owner, it's really hard to compete with. Okay, so I'm good enough to be with a Pembroke girl. That's my husband.
Sorry. I have to yell at some neighbors.
Oh no, don't yell at the neighbors. Yes, and she's not a Pembroke girl. We're not kids anymore, Chris reminded him. She's a Pembroke woman who likes your books. Sure, but she makes me a little anxious. Well, that's because she's a challenge. And to be honest, you haven't had a challenge in a while. It's been a couple years, Chris said. You've been working and hanging out with me the whole time. And there was truth in his friend's word. He had been coasting for the past 2 years, keeping a simple routine of work, exercise, visiting family. But in the last 2 weeks, 2 tornadoes had entered his life, knocking things off kilter. Becca's schooling and coming-of-age drama was colliding with Victoria's project and proposed affair schedule. It was usually during these times of heightened stress John's inability to concentrate became a problem. When he tried to balance too many things, something always fell. It was another frustrating reminder that he had to work twice as hard as the average person to complete the same task. Well, have you talked to Jessie about her? Chris asked. I normally would, but I don't want her to think I'm more distracted than usual. She's expecting a fairly intact child by the time she gets back. I'm just saying, it might help to have a woman's opinion. By the way, Jessie's divorce is final, right? John raised a brow as he stared down at Chris. His friend, a known serial monogamist, was always itching to find his next ex-girlfriend, and even though he had known Jess as long as he had John, the idea of his best friend sniffing around his stepsister made John clench the bench beneath him. Choose your words wisely, friend. Chris abruptly stood and walked behind the heavy bag with a swagger that matched his lopsided grin. You think she's ready to start dating yet? Chris? I'm sorry, I'm back to being your dude bro friend. Yeah, I'm ready for the next circuit, John said, standing up. Chris laughed. Just pace yourself, old man. Next scene? Oh man, that was so much fun, Becca said, practically skipping down the main street. I got to practice fight this kid named Patrick and I kicked him in the balls. John furrowed his brow. Okay, I know that seems like something you want to brag about, but let's refrain from shouting it on the city sidewalks. Dante said that I have the best legs for kickboxing. He says that I've got reach, she said in a rushed voice. They were on their way to the Coffee Hound to celebrate her first class with one of those frap monstrosities. Hearing her jabber on about fighting in a sanctioned manner made John proud of her, even if she was now a terror to the boys in her class. He was also really relieved to think of something else besides Victoria. No, I'm proud of you, sweetie. You're going to be known for your reach. Plus, I'm already more flexible than most of the kids in my class. I can kick over my head. See, look. Ooh, look at that dress. John laughed at Becca, who stopped in front of a storefront window and examined a pink cocktail dress. He could relate to her shiny object distraction. Yeah, that's cute, he said, casting it a brief glance. Hey, isn't that your friend Victoria? Becca said. John stopped dead in his tracks. What? He peered inside the window, trying to hide behind the pink dressed mannequin. He caught the sight of a voluptuous woman in a small black dress sauntering towards the window, hands on her waist, full hips swaying with every step. He recognized those hips immediately. It was Victoria, all right, in that dress. Her cleavage was ample, much more than he was used to seeing in those prim professor blouses. "Yeah, that's her," Becca said, hopped up on post-workout endorphins. She whizzed past her uncle and entered the store. She didn't have time to hear him hiss, "Becca, no!" Chapter 20. This is with the girls, and they're shopping. "Paula, you are day drunk on white wine," Victoria said, squeezing into a black mini dress that she found on the sales floor. "And I'm not listening to you." Paula, who was in the next dressing room stall, made a sound that may have been teeth sucking. "First of all, bitch, when housewives do it on TV, no one says boo. Second of all, I'm not the one who gave the boy a schedule." "Psh, girl," Reggie sounded off in the next stall on the other side of Victoria. "And then you got the nerve to not to follow the damn schedule. Aren't you supposed to be with him right now?" "Ugh, I panicked," Victoria huffed as she zipped up her side. "I started doubting everything once we ran into Dr. Williams. He acted like an asshole, and John gave it right back to him." Even though the whole confrontation had made her break out into a cold sweat, Victoria was thrilled that John came to her defense. Hadn't she already told Kenneth how she felt about being called Ms. Reese? It had been so satisfying seeing her boss look flustered by John's clever retorts. "Ugh, I can't imagine how he would react to my mom, the queen of criticism. Thinking about those two squaring off makes me sick." Psh. "Catherine might be critical as hell, but you too grown to let her be a cockblock," Reggie said with a scoff. "And besides, I'd like to sit ringside for that introduction. You need a guy like John in your corner." It was easy for her friend to think about the long-term relationship that Victoria was actively ignoring. Even if Catherine did approve of John, she'd still be pestering her about her future. "When will you get married? We'll spare no expense for the invitations." Their weekly phone calls would turn into a daily occurrence. Anyway, Dr. Williams is now probably running loose telling everybody I'm cavorting with a children's librarian in order to finish my 4-week initiative. "Well, he wouldn't be completely wrong," Paula said, "but I can see what you're saying. I mean, when I met him on campus, I totally understood why you'd want to cavort. He's a gentleman who brings women potted plants." "Potted plants?" Regina asked. "He brought me an orchid plant," Victoria explained. "It was a beautiful gesture." "Aw, that's really cute." Victoria returned to the issue at hand. "And then there's this whole thing with his niece, Becca. The situation at her school felt so familiar and painfully awkward. I remember being helpless when I was her age, not knowing where I fit in. By the time he drove me home or back to school, it all felt too messy." "Okay, that's a long list of excuses," Paula said. Victoria could almost hear her roll her eyes. "But that's life. It's messy and complicated, and romance is no different." "Day drunk Paula is right," Regina added. "And while I commend you for trying to stay neat and in control, romance is not like ticking boxes on a sushi menu." "Well, maybe you're both right," she said as she checked herself in the mirror. I think I'm just shocked by how quickly I got used to the idea of a fun, flirty affair. It's so liberating, like I'm rebelling against something." "And the first time you started talking about first dates, you freaked out?" Paula asked. "Are you afraid of commitment?" "I like John," Victoria said, staring at her reflection. God, this sounds so stupid. I think I like him, so yeah, I'm afraid of a ton of things. She was met with silence. For once, her friends had nothing to say. "Anyway, this one's a little too low cut for my taste," she said, changing the subject. "Well, let's see it," Regina said. She tried to hitch the neckline upward before pulling back the curtains. "What do you think, too much?" Regina cocked her head and narrowed her eyes. "I think you could go lower, actually." And she went ahead and readjusted the neckline herself. "Wait! Oh, hush." You don't get to have these titties and not show them off every once in a while. Reggie. Penny, the boutique owner and statuesque black woman with a giant sandy afro and stylish leather leggings, walked over. They had been loud enough for her to listen to their dressing room antics. With her hands on her hips, she pursed her lips and appraised the dress on Victoria. She's right. That one is actually classified as a freakum dress, and you are filling it out perfectly, she said with a smile. I think you should try on some shoes for the full effect. Hey! Paula called out from her stall. Get it, girl! A bashful smile spread across Victoria's face as she checked herself out in the three-way mirrors. Yeah? The dress hugged her hips, snatched her waist, and outlined her full bust before settling on her shoulders. She wound her braids into a neat bun at the top of her head and looked at the lines of her neck and the curve of her shoulders. Not bad at all. Plus, you got legs for days, so yeah. Paula whipped back the curtain to reveal her own dress. It was an A-line emerald cut cocktail number that stopped just above her knees. The boat neck bodice and three-quarter sleeves sparkled, while the skirt was fluffy taffeta. The dress complemented her full figure so beautifully, Victoria actually squealed. Paula, you look like a sexy black June Cleaver. They collapsed against one another in laughter as Penny strolled back with a simple pair of black velvet pumps. Try these on, she instructed, as she knelt down and held them in place. Victoria slipped her feet in and smoothed down the front of her dress. Okay, she said, admiring herself in the mirror. This might be okay. She's not used to anything but work clothes, Reggie said to the store owner, so this right here is literally blowing her mind. Calm down, Victoria said, still staring at herself. I like it, but where does a Pembroke professor wear a freakum dress? Penny shrugged. It sounds like you need to wear it that one time with the children's librarian. The store went silent as Victoria's eyes widened. Her friends began to shout in unison, Okay, I know that's right, as they exchanged high fives with the woman. Victoria released the breath that she held and chuckled. As the proprietor of this store, I'm swearing you to secrecy. Woman placed her hand on her chest. I promise. Since, she likes him, Regina said with a cheeky grin. Just going to speed up a little bit. Victoria does a sachet walk through the store, whoop whoop, swinging her hips as she goes, and then she sees Becca through the storeroom door or window. Becca came streaking inside, her face flushed and sweaty and curls all askew. Victoria! She froze with an awkward grin plastered on her face. Becca, what are you up to? She glanced at the window where John had already disappeared. I just got out of kickboxing class. I'm really good at it, the little girl said. Oh, wow. Okay. Becca took a moment to look her over. That dress is awesome. Thank you, Victoria said as she tried to bury her panic. God damn it. John is going to come following in behind Becca, and they're going to talk about the things that she didn't have any time to solve regarding their weird relationship. She could feel herself spiraling and could not stop the free fall. The door opened, and John entered the safe space of women trying on dresses. Victoria felt exposed in more ways than one. She wasn't wearing the armor of her button-up work attire. They weren't meeting for an illicit hookup. They were out in the open with her friends and his niece looking on in curiosity. Her sexy catwalk was over, and she was standing awkwardly while he approached Becca, laying a hand on her shoulder. Mr. Donovan, she breathed. His eyes took a slow tour down her body before returning to her hot face. Dr. Reese? Her stomach dropped and her breast tingled when he licked his lips and his nostrils flared. He and Becca were both dressed in workout clothes, but John's gray sweatpants caught her attention. There was definitely an outline against the front of his pants, and she was trying not to focus on it. His sandy hair was slick flat with sweat as if he had also exerted himself that afternoon. "John, it's nice to see you," Paula said, racing towards the clusterfuck. She sidled next to Victoria while Reggie found her way to the other side, and even Penny made an appearance. 4 thirsty women against a man and child. Victoria held her breath and hoped for the best. "Hi, I'm Regina Crawford, banker and one of Vicky's closest friends." The store owner even edged in and said, "And I'm responsible for her dress." A flicker of amusement lit John's face as he regarded each woman who crowded around Victoria. "Ladies," he said, tilting his head, "it's lovely to meet you." "Charmed," Regina said. "I'm John Donovan, and this is my niece, Becca," he replied. "Oh, we know," Regina said. Victoria shot a glare at her friend, who ignored it. "Victoria told us all about your little project you're working on." John's eyes flitted back to hers before he blushed. His eyes then dropped to her cleavage once again. "Yeah, well, I'm hoping I can help her the best way I can." "Oh, I'm sure you will," Regina said in a very demure voice. She looked down at Becca, who had been watching the entire exchange with a bemused grin. "Baby girl, your hair is doing the absolute most right now." Becca grinned. "I was in kickboxing," she said with pride. The mother and Regina could not help herself. She gathered the child away from John's grasp. "That doesn't mean you still can't look cute. Lord of mercy, look at these curls." And without Becca as his shield, John stood there alone and looked sheepishly at the ground. "We had a late start this morning," he explained, "and I didn't have time with the hair department." Victoria shook her head. "You don't have to explain." Regina wouldn't stop. "You got this baby out here looking bedraggled." "Reggie," Victoria said through her teeth. She knew what her friends were trying to pull, and it was thoroughly embarrassing. "Let me fix what's going on here while you two chat about your little project," Regina said, leading Becca to the dressing room area. Paula and Penny picked up on what Regina was putting down and joined her, leaving Victoria alone with John. The two stood there, uncertain of what to say, until John started. "Honestly, if we weren't late, I would have helped her do something with her hair. I'm not completely inept." Victoria tried to suppress her grin. "They are not concerned about Becca's hair in the least," she said in a quiet voice. "They're preying on your insecurities as a white dude while they push us together." John gave a nod of recognition. "Gotcha. And why would they do this?" "Because my friends are messy." "Right," he said, biting his lip. "Okay." Victoria ducked her head to hide her smile. In truth, she was happy to see him. She felt terrible for evading him since yesterday evening, and throughout the night she had considered texting him but decided against it. Instead, she opted to hang out with the girls and discuss yesterday's events. She went to sleep thinking about John and woke up thinking about him. Victoria sighed before explaining herself. "I just wanted to spend some time with my friends today. I was hoping that I could call you before actually seeing you." "No, it's fine," he said. "You were right. Today was a good day for me to spend time with Becca. As she said, she's taken up kickboxing, and apparently it's changing her life." She glanced back at the group of women crooning around Becca and smiled. "I'm glad to hear it." "You look gorgeous," he said, changing the subject. "That dress is amazing." When Victoria turned back to meet his intense gaze, her face heated up. "Thank you. I know that I'm supposed to wait for you to call me, but I feel like acting impulsively," he said. "Would you like to come by my house tomorrow?" Becca's staying over at her friend Kelly's house, and I think they're still hammering out the details of their feminist manifesto. Every doubt that she had just shared with her friends was quickly banished by his invitation. "Yes," she said quickly. I'll come to you." "Good," he said with a determined nod. "I'll leave the fun planning to you." "Okay," she breathed. "And I'm sorry about how we left things yesterday. I think I just got really nervous." "Dr. Reese, you never need to feel nervous around me," John said, stepping closer to her. His green eyes sparkled. "I thought I already proved to you that you can feel other things." Victoria's breast heaved against the tight neckline of her dress, constraining her breath. "Right," she said. "I thought about us in your office, in the greenhouse, inside of a closet," he whispered in a low purr. "And I cannot shake your taste, your scent, or the feeling of your beautiful lips wrapped around my cock." She stood there in a dress, in a pair of shoes that weren't her, trembling under his steady gaze, feeling naked and vulnerable. The soft huskiness of his voice paired with the rawness of his words made her panties damp with desire. "John," she said. He shook his head. "Nope. Not now, my dear. I'll be your Johnny tomorrow." Victoria nodded her head silently. "Tomorrow." "Becca, honey, we need to head out," he called, keeping his gaze locked on Victoria. "Do we have to?" Becca answered from somewhere in the back of the store. "Yes, ma'am." Becca trotted to the front of the store, meeting up with her uncle. Her curls were gathered in a tighter, neater bun at the top of her head. "See you later, Victoria," she said with a sunny smile. "I'll see you later, sweetie." John threw an arm around the girl and guided her towards the door. "Dr. Reese? Mr. Donovan?" When they left, she let out a breath that she held and shook out her arms. Anxiety and nerves coursed through her body, shaking her to her very core. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Girl. Bitch. Okay." The women surrounded her with knowing looks, tongues wagging like thirsty wolves. I know. Did I sound like an idiot? I didn't sound like an idiot, did I?" "Girl, I couldn't tell," Regina said. "You two had your heads together talking so low." Penny leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "He looked like he was going to eat you up." "It's probably the dress," Victoria said. Her knees were still shaking after their interaction, and she could not wipe the grin from her face. She returned to the three-way mirror and gave herself another look. "Okay, I look good." Penny gave a throaty chuckle. "I wish it were my dresses that could take the credit, but I would say 80% of that exchange was you." "Girl, the Facebook photos don't do his body justice," Paula said. "He really does look like a Viking dressed in sweats." "Right?" Victoria said excitedly. "I mean, I've seen him in jeans and dress slacks, but the sweatpants might be a game changer." Regina's jaw fell. "I've never heard you say anything sexual about a dude, much less openly objectify one." "How big is it?" She shook her head. "A lady does not kiss and tell." "Suck and tell, you mean?" Paula asked. Victoria burst into laughter. "Okay, suck and tell then." Wide-eyed and visibly shook, Regina clutched her heart and rolled her eyes upward. "Jesus Christ, Vicky, you have to tell us everything." Maybe she didn't need the dress to catch John's attention, but wearing it made her feel sexy enough to let her hair down in front of her friends. Today she didn't feel like prim Victoria, too polite to talk about sex with the girls. This new Victoria was a little bit more reckless and exciting. Where to start, she mused. "Preferably at the beginning," Paula said. "Let me get a pen, because this could end up in my next book." And that is the end of that reading. Oh my God, my sister is in this chat, and she wants to know what suck and tell means. Well, little lady, if you don't know by now. So basically, that is just a couple of chapters just letting you know a little bit about the personalities of both John and Victoria, and the cast of characters that they surround themselves with to support them, lean on, get advice from. And these two are just kind of like bopping around, pretending that they're not totally head over heels in love, but of course they are, because that's what romance is. So, tell her to read the book. My sister has the book. She'll read it. But yeah, this would be a great time for you guys to just, pipe in with any questions. There's a Q&A right now. I guess I could scroll back to anybody who may or may not have had a question. But, just feel free to jump in and ask me, whatever you feel like about the writing process, these books, things like that. I guess I should have told people that there was a Q&A before I started reading. Sorry guys, I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm here to answer everything that you need to know. Our neighbors are acting a fool next door, and so I don't know if you could hear that, but that's what Noah was checking on.
This is how Sweden is reacting to a spike in deaths as they're having parties.
Yeah, our neighbors are next door having a not social distancing party. That's how Sweden gets down here. Okay, so Ronnie asked, Ronnie is my big sis. She wants to know, how did you come up with your characters? So basically, not to sound so corny, but characters are just like snippets of people that I've actually met. They're snippets of me, they're snippets of past relationships that I've been in. And, if I meet you in a bar, and I've met a lot of interesting people at bars, or I've worked alongside people, there are characteristics that I just pick up and I remember, or I'll just record, and I'll use them for later. Now, that's not to say that every person that I know is actually in my books. That is not true, but I think little snapshots of people that I have been acquainted with, run into, things like that, that's how it ends up in the book. And some of these characters are loosely based on some characteristics that I have. So reading about somebody's cock in one's lips, I'm basically Victoria, and that I didn't want to read that, but that is about as tame as I could, I just didn't want to read it, because I know that you guys are watching, and I know most of you, and it's awful. You just read it on your own. Let's see. Suzanne, hello. Thank you for asking a question. What inspires you to write about BWWM books? For those of you who don't know, that's black woman, white man pairings in romance. And, the first couple of books, they are BWWM, but I can't guarantee that it's going to stay that way. My husband is a white dude, and it's not based on any one type, but, we've been married together, we've been married to one another for so long that there are some things that do you feel comfortable with me? There are some things about my husband's personality that I just put into my heroes. Like I said, that will not last, because the next story that I'm writing will be a black woman, Latino man combination. And I'm planning on writing like straight up #Black Love too in the future. But thank you for the question, Suzanne Hall Comrie? Thank you for saying that I look cute doing it, Janelle. I appreciate it. What inspired you to live in Europe? Well, not so much inspiration, but my husband applied for a teaching job in Sweden, and just luck as a draw. Things in academia right now are not the hottest in the United States. And so, it's time for us to just kind of move outward and explore other places where he can practice his scholarship and teach what he's interested in. And by the time we came over here, I found out that I would be teaching too. So I ended up teaching a few classes, which is fine, but I really wanted to start writing full time. This year, writing full time. Coronavirus, nobody's going anywhere anyway, so we're all writing full time. So, unless you have like an actual job that requires you to be online, or an essential job that you have to be at a store, a grocery store, you know what I mean. Damn it, Janelle. What inspires your love scenes? They are hot. Let's just say inspiration is not exactly what I'm going for here. Writing love scenes requires as much work as writing everything else. Character development, scenery, dialogue, all of that. And it requires practice. So thank you for saying that they're hot, because it took a lot of work for them to get there. Sometimes my problem is focusing on the choreography too much of lovemaking. Her hand was there, his hand was there, they kissed, she flipped him over, etc. No, if you get caught up in the choreography, which sometimes I do, you do miss the sensuous elements of a good love scene. Also, reading other people's work is reading other people's love scenes, best way to go. See how it's done correctly and internalize some of those, sensuous turns of phrases and things like that. But that's what inspiration looks like for me. It's just a lot of hard work. And the usual love scene, I think I've got like 50, as my editor would tell you, we joked about it, 11 love scenes in this, and each one of them was so hard to write because, you're just trying not to describe stuff over and over in the same way. And they require so much attention that when I've written a fairly long one, and we're talking like 3 pages, I'm done for the day. Like, I don't want to write anything else. I'm taking a break. Kate asks, my mom wants to know what was the most difficult part of writing this particular book. Kate, you could probably tell her. You're my editor. So yeah, Kate she won't tell you this, I'll tell you, but Kate helped me so much with just the telling time aspect of keeping everything in order. I think what I have trouble with whenever I write a book is the continuity and making sure that there are no glaring plot holes when it comes to telling time. And I've never been able to tell time. It's just, I'm good at so many other things, but the act of like measuring, hey Victoria, but the act of measuring distance and time and space and continuums, I'm shit at it. So I would say with that book, with The Right Escape, they were both challenging, and just me trying to keep it all in line. Does that help your mom, Kate? Do we have any other questions? I'm not sure how much time. Oh, we got a little time left. Yeah, so basically, this particular book is the longest thing that I've ever written in my life, I think. Yeah, it's 440 pages. It's, as Noah said, pretty thick. Oh, good. I'm glad. So yeah, I think the longest thing that I've ever written before in my entire life, and you know, that's going to graduate school and having to write so much stuff in a rapid succession and try to push out as much productivity as I can. I will say that this is more enjoyable than graduate school for sure. So, but it ended up that graduate school, higher education, being a teacher in the front of the classroom helped contribute to a lot of this book. You can, I think you'll get a sense of the actual workload of what Black female academics have to put up with. The workload is often silent. Nobody tells you that this is the thing that you have to do. It's just implied that you have to work much harder than everybody else and not get compensated for it. So there's a little bit of ranting in here, not too much, but like more, you know, you're gonna get a lot of hot sex, but you're also gonna learn a lesson. You're gonna learn a lesson about labor and the cost of labor in a Black female body. And it's not just academia, but it's, you know, other professions as well, where Black women have to, we've heard the phrase before, work twice as hard to, you know, get the same amount of credit as the next person who happens to be, you know, not of color. And this book kind of gets into that. We've got a very stressed protagonist here, female protagonist. She's so stressed out, and John is just lovely, and he takes some of that stress off of her shoulders, and then they fall in love. One thing that I was really excited about was getting a chance to write female friendships, young and old. You guys got a chance to hear, you know, Victoria and her girlfriends laughing and kikiing in the store. I will say that is actually based on my watching my older sister and her friends. That's the friend kind of group that I aspire to have, is just like everybody, you know, goofing on each other, ragging, but always having each other's backs. So that is like a female friendship kind of example that I wanted to give my reader. And also the little girl Becca, John's niece, she's got her own little preteen friendship group, and I like to see more of that in romance. I've read a few romances where that's highlighted, and I really loved it, and I wanted to try my hand at it as well. I'm rambling at this point. Ronnie asks, how do you feel now after your first reading? I feel sick. I feel like all the nerves and the adrenaline are like pouring out of my body, and I feel exhausted, and I don't know. I've gone to conferences, I've presented a paper, I've done poetry readings, I've even been in a stage play. This is a lot more intense because, oh thanks. This is a lot more intense because these are the words that I wrote. Somebody published them, and I still feel like, oh, am I even good enough for this? And also, I never really want to sit here and read sex words to you guys. I'm not there yet. But, you know, I'm glad I did it, and I'm really glad that this opportunity came about. So, you know, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, we're just, these neighbors are fucking loud, and I don't know what the deal is. They need to be indoors. Hey, Rebecca, how do you do? I'm waving at you. There. If you guys are good, and if you're all satisfied with the information that I've given you, I think I could probably wrap it up. Please tell me if I've missed... Oh, Christy says hey.
Hey, Christy.
Cousin Christy says hey.
Christy.
Thank you, Christy. Please let me know if I've left anything out. You can, where to buy this book. You can buy it on all ebook retailers, basically. So your Kindles and your Nooks and your Rokos and things like that. Oh, Susan has another question. So what's next? Okay, two things are next. So the one that I was briefly mentioning with the Black woman Latino pairing, Latino man pairing, that one's going to be a novella, and I'm working on that right now. It's called A Second Shot, and I don't know, somebody might change the title, so don't get too attached to it, but it's a bartender's story. I got my adjunct professor who needs a quick summer job because she's only got one class that she's able to teach and she needs the money. The man who owns the bar in her town is looking for a server, and she's it. The snag, though, is that he is starting school again, and he's taking an online class, and she's teaching it. So we've got a bit of a kind of a thing going on here. This is my boss, but also my student. This is my professor, but also my employer or employee, and, you know, sparks and stuff like that. That's going to be a short one. The next long novel that I'm working on, and I'm doing these two things together at the same time, which is freaking nuts. But Jewelry Heist. Jewelry Heist is the next big novel that I'm working on, Susan. Thank you for asking. Yeah, Jewelry Heist. Some of it's going to take place, it starts off in New York City, and some of it's going to take place in Sweden, because that's where I am now, and I feel like I know this country well enough to report on some of the stuff, okay? Oh, anyway, you can buy this book wherever fine ebooks are sold. I think I should probably log out, but before I do, thank you all for taking time out of your afternoon. It's afternoon for you, it's nighttime for me. But thank you for taking the time to stop by and listen to me read/ramble/ oh god, the first 8 minutes of this is a mess. Can somebody clean it up? No? Okay. So yeah, the first 8 minutes, just rambling. I'm talking to myself and Noah. But when you get into the reading, I hope it's great for those who are watching it back. Thank you again, and I think I'm just gonna press finish. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Bye, guys.